The Battle of Britain was an air battle between the British Royal Air Force and the German Luftwaffe. This battle lasted from July 4th to October 31st, 1940. The battle was a preliminary assault to the eventual attack that Adolf Hitler wished to wage on the British mainland. Relying mainly on his Luftwaffe commander, Hermann Goering, who told Hitler he would be able to break the British air defenses, thereby allowing the German ground forces to invade and take over the British. The German Luftwaffe was coming off a very effective campaign in the Spanish Civil War in which their bombing was so effective that people began to expect 500,000 deaths a day in Britain before Hitler even ordered attacks to begin. The German Luftwaffe began probing the British defenses on July 4th, leading to all-out day assaults on the British mainland. Following an accidental bombing of a civilian target by German air forces, Winston Churchill ordered a bombing run on the German homeland in Berlin. It is following these bombing runs that a pivotal decision is made, which will lead to the first major loss of German offensive in Europe. Hitler's anger with the bombing of Berlin, along with relative lack of success, caused him to force Goering to change his currently extremely successful tactics of bombing the RAF Fire Command and switch to civilian targets in London. This is the divergence point on which the entire war may have shifted one way or the other. Hermann Goering was a German Luftwaffe commander who was responsible for the bombing of the British mainland and was expected to beat them down until there were no more RAF fighters to fight back a German land invasion. The critical point in the Battle of Britain, which is the difference between a German victory and a British victory, is a change in tactics by Goering. The tactics that Goering was employing before the bombing of Berlin by the British were highly devastating and would have knocked the British fighter command out in a week or two had Goering held back Adolf Hitler longer. Had Goering realized how devastating his attacks were, and had he stuck to his plans even under the pressure he faced, he would have been able to break the British and allow a land invasion on the British mainland. It is easy to see how the British leader, Winston Churchill, would be present in Britain during an attack by the German forces. It is also easy to see how, when trying to escape these German forces, he would have been gunned down by a German U-boat while sailing across the Atlantic to the safety of the United States and killed. Following the death of British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, a land invasion would have taken place codenamed Operation Sea Lion. Much like its American counterpart, Operation Overlord, the operation would have taken place in two stages. The first stage would have been dropping of paratroopers behind British lines, and the second stage would have been the landing of German land invasion craft such as that. Following the completion of Operation Sea Lion, the Germans would have focused their attention on the Eastern Front fighting the USSR. Following the end of this fight, the Germans would have then put British civilians and Russian civilians into German concentration and work camps that helped bolster the German economy and work towards their war machine. September 11, 2001. This is a date we now know as the terrible date of the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Centers in New York City. But what if those attacks never happened? Had Adolf Hitler been leader of the Nazi Party till the age of 75, he would have been the leader until the year of 1964. Through his time as leader, Hitler would have set up a strict government with little tolerance for revolt. So is it crazy to think that with Adolf Hitler in control of the Middle East, he would have stamped out terrorism in the Middle East and stopped terror attacks in the rest of the world? Or even crazier, would the United States have ended up working with Al-Qaeda and groups we see as extremist groups now in an effort to take down the Nazi Party? On a day-to-day basis, we see the power of groups like Al-Qaeda or even more recent ISIS. Combined with the military might of the U.S., these groups would have been extremely useful in fighting against the Nazi Empire. When considering the alliances made in World War II, it is easy to see how future wars would occur from these alliances because of the tension and the relations between the leaders of these countries. Had Germany finished off Britain, there would have been four conceivable world powers, and Italy left in the world theater. With no more Britain left to occupy Germany, war would become inevitable among the three Axis countries. First, Germany would attack and take over the Italian peninsula and then move on to finish off Russia. Following the takeover of these two countries, Germany would help Japan take over the US and occupy the country. Then, the inevitable war between Germany and Japan would soon follow. This would turn into one of the bloodiest and harshest wars to date. With the ruthless tactics of the Germans and the kamikaze guerrilla style of the Japanese, Death tolls would be high, with little ground gained, much like World War I. Eventually, Japan would begin to gain ground in the United States front due to the inability of Germany to supply their massive empire. Over time, a stalemate would ensue, followed by a ceasefire between Japan and Germany, bringing forth the end of World War II. The destruction and ruin left behind by the war would be such that over 70% of Americans alone would not have a home to live in, forcing them to move into Japanese labor camps in order to gain food and shelter. In both Japan and Germany, the economic wealth and prosperity would be outstanding, while the rest of the world would be working to support these countries and would be living in poverty.